Okay, Grand Rising. I'm going to go over a few big money patterns. We'll start out with the 3, 7, 4, 8. All right, let's do that. 3, 7, 4, 8. That's on January 24th. On January 23rd, I told my VIP, hey, look, if you want to even come close to winning, you have to focus on my top 5 4 digits. Okay? Now, this is what's important, ladies and gentlemen. Triple dollar signs, fire, and those first 2. So again, you see, I promise triple dollar signs will manifest 123 to 131 in Texas. The very last number you see straight. That's thousands right there, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, 005. Ladies and gentlemen, again, I promise the very last number you see would manifest first. Triple dollar signed it as proof. Triple dollar signs will manifest from 118 to 127, guaranteed in Georgia. Your state first. 0352. Ladies and gentlemen, on 123, I told my VIP, hey, look, to win, focus on my top 5 4 digits. I promise the first 2 will manifest 123 to 131 in Georgia. Here I go showing off. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, numbers don't lie. 121 to 129. I told my VIP to win, focus on my top 5. I promise those triple dollar signs will manifest. Here I go again, ladies and gentlemen. Guaranteed, specifically the number 3 big money pattern to win. Focus on my top 5 4 digits. They will manifest from 120 to 128. Ladies and gentlemen, 8490. Ladies and gentlemen, only 7 hours. I promised to win. Focus on my top 5 4 digits. I promise those first 2 will manifest 125. That was on the date. 7 hours is all you had to wait. Ladies and gentlemen, here you go again. As you can see, the only motherfucking big money pattern on fire. I promise they will manifest 119 to 128. A 5-year-old can pick out fire. Ladies and gentlemen, 871. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise my top 2 big money patterns would manifest straight between the dates 122 and 130. Ladies and gentlemen, 476. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise those first 2 big money patterns will manifest. Y'all don't hear me though. Ladies and gentlemen, 0192. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise the top two. If you focused on the top five, there's no way you miss the top two. Straight. Right there, ladies and gentlemen, 120 to 128 in Michigan. Here I go showing off. Ladies and gentlemen, I guaranteed 1, 2, 3, 4 to win. Focus on the top 5 4 digits, which I promise the first two. And you would see these numbers drop between 116 and 125. I also guarantee the number 4, you see it right there, 1, 2, 3, 4, straight. Ladies and gentlemen, 9846. Ladies and gentlemen, only 8 motherfucking hours. The very last motherfucking number you see, I can make it manifest first. And I did that. Same day, 8 hours. Ladies and gentlemen, here I go again showing off. As you can see, numbers don't lie. This is consistency at its best. You see it for yourself. Triple dollar signed. Told you, I promise the triple dollar signs will manifest. 123 to 131. Oh, wait, look. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, the top 5 right there. Right there. You see it for yourself over and over and over again. I am proving that energy, frequency, and vibration is real. Ladies and gentlemen, 384, 9 motherfucking hours. Y'all see it for yourself. On 125, I told you, you would see this happen. But y'all don't hear me. Look at this, showing off. Told you, it would manifest. 977, ladies and gentlemen, only motherfucking big money pattern on fire. You see it for yourself, 122 to 130. Your state. That's New York. Here I go again, promised it over and over and over. Straight! Right there. Triple dollar signed it. New York. Here we go again, 9983. Guaranteed! Woo! Top 4. All you had to do was focus on the top 5. The number 4 was specifically identified as being a guaranteed winner. Ladies and gentlemen, 399. Ladies and gentlemen, 399 Black Sheep, on time, accurate to manifest straight. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, promised the very last motherfucking number you see would manifest first. 122 to 130. Ladies and gentlemen, 5524. Ladies and gentlemen, Black Sheep, one time to manifest. 122 to 130. Ladies and gentlemen, 673. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, I triple dollar signed it for Georgia, and it's circled multiple times. Georgia for Georgia. So that means that if you were just running my Georgia numbers in Georgia, you would have won. Here's the backup plan. Georgia. You see it for yourself. The top 4 between the dates 117 and 126. Ladies and gentlemen, 0608. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise my VIP. The number 1 motherfucking big money pattern. Georgia for Georgia. How can you miss? You don't have to run them all, but you do have to run them. So again, that's Georgia for Georgia. I hope one of my members is watching this. Ladies and gentlemen, 761. Ladies and gentlemen, the black sheep told us, hey, look, 761 will be a underdog big money pattern. Nobody will be thinking about that combination. And that's why they drew it, because it paid out the least amount of money. Here I go again. I promised you the number one motherfucking big money pattern will supersede anything else that you're thinking about. No flips, no mirrors, just true facts. Numbers don't lie. Ladies and gentlemen, 0941. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised. Look, to win, focus on my top 5 4 digits. They will manifest 121 to 129. I also guarantee you will see these in Tennessee. Look, at 2:23 a.m. on 121. I guarantee I would manifest 0941. Let's go back. Oh yeah, that's straight. That's straight. That's thousands. Ladies and gentlemen, how can you go wrong when I'm putting it in the number one slot? The number one motherfucking big money pattern. Ladies and gentlemen, 9586. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise my top 2 big money patterns will manifest 122 to 131. You see it for yourself. Here I go showing off right here. Only motherfucking big money pattern on fire. A 5-year-old can pick out fire. That was for Michigan. 117, I gave it to you. Told you you would see it by 125. Ladies and gentlemen, 476 and 257. Ladies and gentlemen, 257, I guaranteed it would manifest 124 to 22. You see it for yourself. Here I go showing off. Ladies and gentlemen, number one motherfucking big money pattern. Ladies and gentlemen, 859. Ladies and gentlemen, promised triple dollar sign it to manifest straight on 125. Ladies and gentlemen, 4560. Ladies and gentlemen, the only motherfucking big money pattern on fire. The same day. You see it for yourself. Right there on 125. I told you. On fire, it's going to happen. But y'all don't hear me. It's either you don't hear me or you don't believe me. So I know you hear me, so you just don't believe me. That's all it is. 2919. Number one motherfucking big money pattern. You see it for yourself. I told you I can make my deadline date. I just explained that to one of my VIP members today. I said, go with number one and fire. If you have the time and if it's in your budget, go to the very last day. Today is the very last day. Yesterday, the very last day was the 25th. Boom, boom, boom. You see it right there for yourself. 125 was the very last day that I told you you needed to invest in it. But y'all don't hear me though, or you don't believe in me. Ladies and gentlemen, 884. Ladies and gentlemen, the black sheep told us nobody is going to be looking for 884. That means there's a very high probability of them drawing 884. Why? Because they pay out the least amount of money. When they pay out the least amount of money, they make money, right? Here I go, showing off again. Only motherfucking big money pattern on Fire! You see it for yourself. For Georgia, hello, Georgia, fire! Ladies and gentlemen, 087. Ladies and gentlemen, I promised my top two big money patterns would manifest 121 to 129. It happened on 125. Ladies and gentlemen, 1068. Ladies and gentlemen, number one motherfucking big money pattern. You see it for yourself. 118 to 126 in North Carolina. Here I go showing off again. Only motherfucking big money pattern on fire. Told you would see it. Look, 124 to 22. You see it for yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, 153. Ladies and gentlemen, this is for today. Ladies and gentlemen, on 124 at 5:30 a.m., I promised that big money pattern would manifest. 412, ladies and gentlemen, I promised my VIP that I could make manifest 412 straight today. Here I go showing off again. Promised the triple dollar signs. 412 straight. That's consistency right there, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, 0167. Ladies and gentlemen, 6701. That was the only big money pattern that said, hey, look, nobody's going to be thinking about me today, so they will draw me. You see it for yourself. 120 to 128. Today is 126. So we're looking at 1237. And they still haven't done anything for Georgia yet. So what I'll do is I'm going to take a look at, let's take a look at all right. Boom, boom, boom. Right. Okay. This is for you people who don't believe in me. It's okay. I believe in myself. It's all that counts. To win, focus on the top 3 digits, which I promised the first 2 will manifest. From 120 to 128, I also guarantee you will see it in your state in capital letters. So don't ask me, do I do your state? Watch out for 540. Watch out for 523, 528. Watch out for 721. Doom, 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 doom. Doom, 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 doom. Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to win, focus on those top 4 digits, which I promise the first 2 big money patterns, fire and triple dollar signs, will manifest from 124 to 21. I also guarantee you will see it in your state. And guess what? In most cases, I can make it happen in 24 to 48 hours. Watch out for 4285. Watch out for 01934973. I shouldn't even be saying shit because ain't nobody believing in me. What you see is what you get. Okay. Promise. You see the top 5. You see it for yourself, ladies and gentlemen. I'm out of here. I'm going to take me a break. And I'll see everybody at the winner's table no matter what. If you're interested in joining my VIP, you must know the prerequisite to join. I am no longer accepting people just because you send me money. You have to know what to do. You have to know what to do. I don't have time. I'm spending more time answering questions to people who are not following simple winning instructions. If you want to see residual income, you have to invest in the best. I am the best at what I do. So again, I'm showing you this every single day. And what part you're not understanding, I don't know. A 5-year-old can do fire and the number 1. And if you're doing fire and the number 1, you should not have an issue at all. Especially if you are overlaying those investments, because they will increase. Again, I'm going to see you at the winner's table no matter what. If you're interested in joining, right there, ladies and gentlemen, you can email me and I can send you some more information about my group. And I'm going to go ahead and take a look and see what's going on with Georgia so I can go ahead and get that up and running.